My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
Plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset.
Right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I am sure we're probably listening to this after the Thanksgiving holiday. So whether you are on shift like me, who's going to be spending Thanksgiving Day at the console, or if you have a day off to spend with your family, I hope you all had a safe, and if you're at work, the keyword holiday, and enjoyed spending some time, even if it was just with your callers and your colleagues. Going into the holiday season, I think is tough, right? For first responders who understand that there is no real day off. There's just a day at work that is also a holiday. And so if you are going to be answering calls, remember to give our callers grace. Holidays are a stressful time of year in general. And if you are working, remember to give each other grace because we would all much rather be at home in our comfy pants eating a turkey. So hope you guys are all having a wonderful holiday season as we are almost this close to 2025, which is insane. All right, I was to dive into our two amazing guests today. I'm thrilled to welcome Jason, a distinguished leader in the field of emergency dispatch with over 30 years of experience in public safety. They are currently serving as Chief of Implementations at Priority Dispatch Corporation. We had Dave as well with they have 15 years of experience with Priority Dispatch. They are retired law enforcement and about 5 years ago transitioned into working at the academy where they work with the Police Council of Standards to enhance protocol from content to software. I'm going to get them on here with us now. Dave and Jason. Hi, guys.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello. How are you both?
Doing great.
Doing good. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. Any plans for the holiday? Are we already cooking or what's going on?
We are already cooking and waiting for family to arrive.
Awesome.
Same here.
So
Same here. Excited about it.
now you guys both have extensive experience in public safety. What do you think is memorable about working in this line of work during this time of year?
That's a very good question. I don't know that I would limit it to this time of year, but it's always been very rewarding to me throughout my career. You know, as I started out as a dispatcher, and then worked my way into being a deputy sheriff, and then transitioned back into 911. Whether it was on the telephone or out in the field, it was very gratifying to be able to help people in their greatest time of need.
Amazing. Dave,
Yeah,
what about you?
I agree with Jason. And, victims of crime, all types of crime, it might be something just like a home burglary or an assault situation during the holidays is even that much tougher for people. So to be there for them at that time during the holidays and bring some remedy to what they're a victim of was always gratifying.
Very cool. So let's tell us a little bit about yourselves, kind of how you ended up supporting folks in public safety. Jason, you said you started as a dispatcher and then worked into a sheriff's deputy. What was that like for you in the beginning?
I worked my way through college, working part-time in the 911 field back in the late 80s, which, back then was a completely different environment than it is today. There was no computers. It was all handwritten logs and manual telephones and very conventional type radio systems. And then once I graduated, I became a deputy sheriff in Johnston County, North Carolina. And I was able to do a lot of different aspects in the sheriff's office, from patrol to teaching the DARE program, civil process deputy, and lieutenant in major crimes, and specialized in truth verification. And then in 2000, the sheriff convinced me to transition and be the 911 director there in Johnston County, and was there until 2021, and was able to implement all three of Priority Dispatch's protocols, the medical, fire, and police, and really saw a huge need for structured call taking early on back in the 80s. And even when I got back involved in 2000, it was just not a very fair expectation to hire people and just show them where the telephone is, where the radio is, and just expect them to know what to ask and what to tell the citizens in their greatest time of need. And then in the early 2000s, I had the fortune to be the president of the National Emergency Number Association, commonly referred to as NENA, the 911 Association. And that really opened my eyes up to all the different challenges that are going on nationwide with 911. And I got the opportunity to testify 3 times in front of Congress, twice in front of the House and once in front of the Senate, on next generation 911 and the future of 911. And then I retired in 21, and then became full-time with Priority Dispatch, and the sky's the limit. Having a great time.
Amazing. How about you, Dave? How'd you get involved in all this public safety stuff?
Yeah, well, ironically, when I was in high school, I had a law enforcement class. I'm in my later years. I'm in my 50s, and we had law enforcement courses in high school back then. I had one and just fell in love with my instructor. He was just fantastic.
Mm.
I had a different career path planned out to continue with the family business in the automobile industry. And I met this instructor, and by the time I finished this course, I decided being a cop, that could be pretty interesting. You know, all the different things you can do, whether it's investigations, patrol, motorcycles, canine, all of that stuff just really kind of opened my eyes and made me want to be a part of that. So that's the direction that I took. I started at a very young age, became a reserve officer for a couple of years, and then got into full-time policing at the age of 20. In that, you know, again, I did a lot of those different factors, a lot of those different pathways that you can take in law enforcement, and started to look at my later years after I had 20 years in the police department. Where was I going to go? What was I going to do? So I seeked a second retirement, and that was with the railroad. That didn't last very long. That's a pretty tough business. It was nice going to work in dirty clothes and not shaving and being a trainman for a while, but the whole transportation organization, transportation is a tough business.
Yeah.
I wound up being a safety director for a construction company. That went really well until 2008, when the economy took a dive, and then was introduced to Priority Dispatch. I started speaking with Dr. Clausen, and short time later, I'm employed by him doing police implementations with the police protocol. Anybody that is listening to this program that is familiar with the police protocol, we were on a version 3, and it was a pretty basic, rudimentary type of system back then. It was, as Jason said, that the technology wasn't the greatest back in those days, but it's been really rewarding doing those implementations with organizations, PSAPs, watching them grow and have success with it. I really like the inner workings of developing the protocol. So about 5 years back, I transferred up to the academy, working in that nonprofit setting where we work with clientele and the Police Council of Standards to determine the evolution of the protocol, the changes of it. And it's been a fun ride. Really have enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people who are not in this line of work, the everyday citizen or the individual who only calls 911 once in a lifetime, don't have the knowledge of how far we've come in regards to protocols and standardized training. And, you know, Jason, you mentioned like it isn't fair to employ someone and just show them where the phone is and not give them any, guidelines. Because that's kind of, it was the wild, wild west back in the day, which back in the day isn't that long ago for 911, because 911 is really still very much in its toddler years as far as technology goes.
No, I certainly agree, Ashley. And unfortunately, I lived through a scenario where potential structured call taking would have had a different impact. September 11th, 1995, I lost my partner, in part due to the 911 center not having a structured protocol to follow. And had they had that, that would have assured the officer safety questions were addressed, in which they were not intentionally by any means.
Yeah.
But that's one of the driving experiences I had in my career once I came back to the 911 field, to really strongly be an advocate for structured call taking, because it's just not realistic for 911 centers back then or even today to have people answering their citizens, greatest time of need call, and they not have any type of formal structured protocol to follow.
Yeah. One thing that I really enjoy that I probably get a more of a lens into just with my work with the Raspy Dispatchering, dealing with companies like Priority Dispatch and others, is just the opportunity that is available for folks who did spend 10, 15, 20, 30 years of their lives on the front line, answering phones in the field, um, taking that experience and bringing it into the private sector is, I think, how we create technology that actually is impactful in our centers for our citizens and for the folks doing the job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's been a lot of milestones in the last years in terms of technology achievements. I can remember back in Johnston County 911, we received the first wireless phase 2 call in North Carolina. And that was a huge, very proud milestone for us, because before that, we had a considerable amount of people calling 911. And if they did not know where they were located, we did not. And unfortunately, back then, people were under the assumption, because it happened in the movies and it happened on TV, that if you call 911, they know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, those movies, they set us up for failure.
They can be challenging.
Well, you both have an extensive, career and experience in public safety over the past 30 years, particularly in terms of technology and protocols. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen be implemented?
Dave, you want to go, or?
Yeah, sure, I'll take that. The expectation you talked about, um, television, the movie setting us up for failure, but the expectation hasn't left, right? I mean, when an individual dials 911 and they need a police officer at their house or their business, they expect them to be there right then, right when they give the address and tell you what the problem is.
Yeah,
And we
teleportation
know that
and
that's
all.
just not realistic. No matter how well of a job we do in 911, we still can't guarantee what that response is going to look like when the blue shirts arrive, correct? How many and how long it's going to take them to get there. But again, we're doing more with less now, not just in law enforcement. Certainly that's a problem in and of itself, but also in 911. I don't remember the last time I walked into a PSAP and found that they were at full force with their allocated dispatchers, right? They're just always trying to achieve that level, and so that puts a lot of extra stress on the telecommunicators, working overtime, working double time, working days off, working longer shifts, taking more calls every day. Um, that's just a lot of stress. A lot of stress.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I had spoke about how kind of rudimentary or help me with a word, Jason, how stiff our protocol was. It was
Rigid.
rigid. That is the word I
Mm,
was looking for. And that's the word that
mm,
I've heard over and over from clientele
mm,
back then. A rigid protocol system that was just by the numbers. It was one size fits all. And did it work? Yes, it worked. Was it better than freelancing? I suppose that depends on who you ask. I think it was, but it wasn't good enough, right?
mm,
And so over the years, with all the feedback that we've gotten from big centers, meeting centers, small centers, busy centers, centers that are not as busy, we've come to this realization, and also the achievement in software to give us a lot more flexibility in what that protocol looks like, how it
mm,
serves a app, how it serves a community based upon everything from call volume to resources that are out on the road.
mm,
So now we give you a protocol that is built out with what we like to think, at least today, currently, with everything you could possibly need. Now, are we really
mm,
there yet? Probably not, because it's always evolving and changing. But we have all these tools in there that make up the protocol. And then, the experts that work with Jason, they go in and sit down with the agency to determine what is important to them. What
mm,
information are they trying to capture? Um, and is that information going to alter a response? Because if it's not, there's no need to have it in your protocol, right?
mm,
So we
mhm,
need to turn on and off a lot of functioning questions and instructions to callers that are in the protocol. And I think that's probably been one of our biggest advancements in the last 5, 6 years. It's something that we kind of developed on the police side of the house, which it now is transitioning more heavily into the fire protocol, and even in some cases the medical protocol.
mhm, mhm. I definitely think one thing that I've heard often from, folks who are dealing with companies is wanting to have the ability to have more conversations to be able to change, adapt, update
Yeah.
anything that they're working with, whether it's protocols or just a function of mapping, or the possibilities are endless. So just the fact that you folks are having these conversations, working with the centers to make the protocol matter to them and not waste time, because as we all know, seconds saves lives, and if we're going through protocol that isn't helpful for a situation, that could potentially not be a good situation. So it's awesome that the protocols can be adapted and changed in that manner.
I
Yeah.
totally agree, Ashley. I would just go back to your original question. The challenges we've seen in the last few years, a couple of thoughts come to mind.
Mhm,
The 911 industry is thankfully transitioned to a profession now, as you
mhm,
mentioned earlier, I think on your introduction.
mhm,
There are a lot of states now that are recognizing the 911 center and their staff as true public safety professionals. Because at the end of
mhm,
the day, the 911 dispatchers are practitioners just like paramedics, firefighters, and police officers are out on the road. And,
mhm,
the industry has definitely gotten a lot more professional over the years. Um, the 911 industry is truly the first responder, because we're the first point of contact a citizen has with a first responder response. And we just need to make sure we have the technology, as you've mentioned, in place in the 911 centers, structured call taking in place in the 911 centers, so we can, address the caller's need, mitigate their needs as quick as possible, and get the correct response started. And as Dave mentioned, the police protocol has gone through a lot of transformations over the years. And I started teaching with the original version back in 2002. And the version that we have now is completely different than any of the previous versions. We have definitely, the Council of Standards has upped their game on making sure that really important or high acuity events, we stop the protocol, make the dispatch, and then come back and finish asking the caller questions to continue to tailor the response, even though the response has already started. You know, sometimes callers feel a little frustrated because they feel like, as they see on TV or in the
Yeah.
movies that we mentioned, that if the 911 dispatcher is still talking to me, help's not on the way. And that is far from the truth now in structured call taking, because we've made sure on extremely emergency situations or high acuity events, the protocol recognizes that need to get the dispatch right away, but then continue with questions and instructions to make sure we're getting the response correctly and helping the caller mitigate the situation until we can get responders on the scene.
Awesome. Well, shortages in law enforcement, for police, for dispatch. I mean, it's an ongoing pain point, I think, for many departments, the industry as a whole. I know dispatch specifically. I mean, there's centers that are reporting up to 70%, 80% vacancy rates. So departments are always looking for ways to lift the burden in some way off their folks who are answering these calls and responding to these calls. How is Priority Dispatch working to help our centers and our officers deal with those shortages?
One thing that I think it's often overlooked in structured call taking in our protocol system is what we call the cold call pathway. Ashley, you know as well as I do that when you talk about you're down 70%, we can't afford to be on the phone for 5 minutes on every call that comes in. But we have a cold call pathway, meaning if an event has taken place, and let's say the perpetrator or the vehicle that gave rise to the call being placed to 911 in the first place is no longer on scene, then we just do a very, very basic interrogation. When did the event happen? Happened, let's say 20 minutes ago. Is a suspect on scene? No. You may have one or two additional key questions. That's it. We don't get into descriptions of individuals and suspects and ask all the questions that are in the protocol. It's an investigation. That's something that should be done out in the field and not in 911, right? I like to think in police call taking, we have two types of calls. We have time sensitive calls, we have time critical calls. The time critical calls are where a crime is in progress, an individual is suffering a loss or could be harmed, right? A crime against a person. Time critical. We're going to take our time to get as much information as we can, a complete assessment of what's taking place. As Jason said, we're going to dispatch early, get wheels rolling, but we're going to keep that caller on the line and continue to update the responders with that information versus a cold call where the suspect is no longer there and it's turned into an investigative type of thing. Now what we want to do is get the 911 telecommunicator off the line so he or she can answer the next important time critical call. The other thing that we've kind of instituted or expanded upon in the police protocol system in the last few years is our Omega pathways within the protocol. So an Omega pathway, an Omega call in law enforcement is a call that doesn't need to have an on-scene investigation. We don't need an officer to respond to the scene, an officer or a deputy. It might be a type of an event that we can fish off to some other organization, whether it's in the municipality, like let's say parking enforcement or graffiti removal or animal control, where we're going to gather a little bit of information, give it to that other organization, let them handle it. The police protocol can go a long way to assist, at least in that initial call on the police telephone line environment. The other one is something that a lot of police departments and sheriff's departments across the country are implementing more and more is online reporting systems, which are generally speaking a third-party vendor type of online system that if we determine, again, it's not a crime in progress and the call type is one that we can direct that call taker to tell the complainant, we need you to file this police report online, you can do it at your convenience, and here's the web page to do that. The
Mhm.
protocol can run through that call, suggest that this be an online report, and
Mhm.
give them any um, instructions that are specific to your organization to that caller. You can program that into our ProQA protocols to assist with that. And so I think that that is something that is our current clientele are building out and using more and more.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, did you have anything to add?
I would just say, the police protocol now with these three Omega options, online reporting, telephone reporting, or referral, has been a huge booster for helping agencies mitigate calls that don't actually need a physical response. And a lot of agencies are really embracing this technology now. And as more and more agencies get the ability to do online reporting, we're getting a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for bringing that up, Jason. And I left that out, the telephone reporting. That's a really big one. We discovered during COVID,
Mm.
actually, I thought that this was really quite interesting, that police departments of all sizes would develop kind of a process with the communication center.
Mm.
And if it didn't require, evidence collection and that type of thing where they needed to actually go to the scene, they would often just make a phone call to the caller from their own patrol car while sitting, in a 7-Eleven parking lot under a shady tree. And so the protocol can help with that as well, in terms of letting the caller know what that response is going to look like. I'm going to give
Yeah.
a call to an officer. He's going to call you. He or she's going to call you back and take a police report by phone. And then again, that system works if you have a true TRU or telephone reporting unit set up within your organization as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks don't realize how every agency is so different, right? So every agency handles certain reports differently. Every agency has different protocols. So the ability to kind of mold these protocols to the agency, I think, is really helpful,
I,
probably for much of these centers.
And just to carry that message a little bit further, with the newest version of police that Dave was talking about earlier, this version has really broke the mold, if you will. We've gone from being, somewhat of a rigid protocol to where we now have a tremendous amount of customization that agencies have been asking for. Not to get too far into the weeds, but in the entire police protocol, we've got over 250 questions that are optional
Mm.
and around 50 instructions that are optional. And through the implementation process, our team works with the 911 center and educates them on each one of those optional questions and instructions so they can make an educated decision. Here, in the way we run our operation, this question is needed or this question is not needed.
Mm.
And we've seen that. Dave's been around a long time with the police protocol, and we've seen that it was one of the areas that we maybe didn't do as great a job as we should have in previous versions. And that concept is just going to grow even more. And one of the main reasons is, like you just mentioned, Ashley, the way you process a police call may be completely different than the way your neighbor processes the police call.
Mhm.
And, the priority dispatch police system now allowing you to have, a lot more customization than previous versions has really been a game changer for the police protocol since it was released in October of 22.
Very cool. Dave, did you have anything to add?
Uh, Only the thing that came to mind when Jason was talking is if you're in a center that's been using PPDS, maybe you've been using it for a number of years. Again, it might, and you're having any kind of issues, it would be well worth it to reach out to Jason and his team and to let's pop the hood and look at what you're doing and what you're not doing and what the protocol can help you achieve. Kind of a tune up, and let's see if we can
Yeah.
improve some of those processes within the center. I know that his group reaches out to centers, but once we do the implementation process and then we kind of leave you to your own devices, things happen, things
Mhm.
change. A lot of these advancements in the protocol are in new releases that agencies update to, but they're not aware that they exist, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So reach out to Priority Dispatch and let those experts help you out with that.
And that's Dave's correct, Ashley. That's something we've started in the last 6 months.
Mm.
Is we've assigned all of our implementation staff certain geographical areas throughout the U.S. and they're starting to reach out and develop a customer relation type relationship with the 911 centers. Not
Mm.
to try to sell anything. We're just trying to make sure everything's going good with the protocols. Your experience is good, and
Mm.
we've got a real specific initiative going on because if we still have any agencies out there that are not on version 7 of police, we want to help them as much as they'll allow us to get on version 7. Because
Mhm.
prior to the version 7 of police, it did not have the customization that we were just talking about. And some agencies may be experiencing some frustrations and not realize there's a new protocol in town. Like they were saying, there's a new sheriff in town.
Uh-huh.
7.0 is a new protocol in town, and we're getting a tremendous amount of positive feedback from agencies that have either switched to it or started out on it versus the previous versions of the police protocol.
So for folks who are listening to this and who are like, I haven't discovered, police priority dispatch in general, how do they reach out to learn more about the systems, the software that you guys offer to our centers?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, prioritydispatch.net, and there's a way to ask for a demo. You can see the regional account managers that are assigned to your state. You can reach out to them. Our contact information for implementations is on there as well. Just, give us a call or send us an email. There's a web form to fill out if you would like someone to reach out to you, and I can promise you that will definitely happen.
Amazing. Um, so you both have had extensive experience dealing with representation of 911. Jason, you said you presented at Congress. Dave, you work with, police standards and really working to enhance protocols and challenges that 911 faces today. What are some of these key policy changes that folks should be aware of or folks should be advocating for or just kind of have on their radar when it comes to 911?
The things I would recommend people advocate is to make sure your state is recognizing the 911 operations and the 911 staff as a true public safety professional, as we discussed earlier. Because again, you're the first point of contact. You're the first responder when you're answering that 911 call. And then the other thing I would encourage is make sure you're staying as current as you can with the new technology that's rolling out. There is so much technology out there for 911 centers to be able to use to help, reduce call time or to make sure they're getting the correct response or they're getting as much information in their field responders, laptop or smartphone or device. There's a lot of technology out there, and with AI, now just breaking the horizon, there's a lot of good things, most hopefully coming for 911. We as a company, we're definitely in the middle of researching and developing AI because it's going to definitely have a place in call taking as well as quality assurance. We have a big QA program through the academy, and we have the whole division, our quality performance review division that assists agencies reviewing and providing feedback on how well their staff are using the protocols.
Dave,
Yeah,
what do you
and
think?
there's not a whole lot to add to that. Jason covered that really well. I'll just echo that as a telecommunicator, whether you're new or you've been there a while, I mean, reach out to your local state lawmakers to try to achieve that process of having your career looked at as a part of public safety in terms of salaries, working conditions, retirement plans. So that's something that we can all do.
Awesome. Well, as we bring this wonderful episode to a close, I ask everybody, one question we close out with is, what advice would you give someone who is considering a career in public safety, whether going into the field as an officer or answering calls as a 911 dispatcher? What advice would you give them?
I would say education is a very big benefit. Become as knowledgeable as you can on technology. Um, Public safety is becoming quickly technologically heavy. In 911 centers, I went from a very basic technology operation to we are heavily dependent on technology, even to the point where I had to have my own IT division. I could no longer rely on the county's IT division to keep all of our technologies up and running. The main advice is stay current. Get involved in your local 911 associations. Um, get familiar with protocols. You're more than welcome to take our protocols. You don't have to be employed with a 911 center to be certified in EPD or our fire protocol or our medical protocol. I think that gives you a leg up on application processes when you're able to apply, saying you're coming to the table with these certifications already in hand.
Yeah, those are all really good suggestions, Jason. I'll add that for those listeners that are familiar with some of the employees at the Academy, Bonnie Stockman is working in partnership in a number of states to develop this ETC program initiative to act, let's call it like a pipeline from the high schools into a career in 911.
Very cool.
I had mentioned that I got interested in law enforcement for my high school instructor course, right?
Mhm.
That is something that now they're introducing this ETC program into the high school, being taught by law enforcement. Most of them are retired and earning that 40-hour telecommunicator course while they're in high school. Of course, if you're looking to be a firefighter or police officer and you're just getting out of high school, you're probably going to have to wait a couple years before you can do that till you hit the age limit, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
But that's not really the case in 911. You hit 18, most states will hire you as a telecommunicator. This gives you a leg up on all those other um, applicants and a benefit to the PSAP itself because now you've already got that 40-hour certification course under your belt to take in with your um, application to be hired. But that's it's being taught in Indiana and Illinois, not just in the high schools, but non-traditional high schools and
Mhm.
other workshop alliances. So if you want more information on that, you could reach out by email to Bonnie, Bonnie, dot Stockman, Stockman, at emergencydispatch.org. And she can send out some literature that talks about those programs, where they're available, and give you a little more details on them.
Very cool. Very cool. And I actually lied to you both because I have another question that I didn't think about until just now, but I think it's relative. Is you guys have seen so much change. You guys are on the forefront of implementing protocol and adjusting that protocol as needed. Dispatchers, and I think law enforcement in general, we're a little, hard to change. We don't like change. We don't care for it too much. What is your advice to people who are receiving, the protocol system for the first time, or any new technology coming into their centers? What's your advice to manage that change for them?
The old adage, we've always done it this way, is probably a very good reason to change. And I agree with you, Ashley. Change is very reluctant in public safety.
Mhm.
Having been in public safety for many, many years, I totally understand that perception. Um, but embracing protocols, helps people be able to do their job quicker, easier, and it helps ensure the responders that their safety has been taken care of, and it helps ensure the citizens that we're asking the right questions to make sure they're getting the correct response to deal with their emergency that they're experiencing at that moment in time.
I would agree. And Ashley, I think most young adults that are looking at a career, maybe they were just recently hired in the 911 field, they're probably more techno or technology savvy than certainly I or Jason are or ever will be, but maybe even more so than you. You're not as old as Jason and I, although you've been in the field for a number of years. But um, yeah, this structured call taking ProQA is just a way of doing business, and you hire these young adults and bring them into your center and teach them, CAD, teach them protocol. They just take to it real easy. They just
Mm.
spread their wings and do the job.
Yeah, we do see with the new hires coming in and the new generation coming into the workforce, their stress level drastically drops when they have a structured protocol to follow. When they realize the agency's putting the burden on them to know exactly what to ask and exactly what to tell the caller, they don't like that, and it really adds to their anxiety or stress. So, having structured protocols definitely takes a stab at that.
Very cool. Well, this has been amazing. Is there anything else you folks want to add before we hop off?
Enjoyed our time with us, Ashley. Look forward to spending some more time with you in the future.
Amazing.
I agree. Great speaking to you, Ashley, and to all your listeners, have a happy holidays.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you guys.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Priority Dispatch, an amazing company, amazing software that is really helping to take the weight off the shoulders of folks who are in these centers, dealing with these citizens who are in these life and death, life changing emergencies. So, definitely, if you haven't checked out their software, the options they have for your centers and their certification programs, even if you're not in a center, if you're interested in boosting that resume before you get into a center, definitely check all of that out. We're going to include all of that information to contact them to check out what they got going on in the note section of this excuse me episode. So definitely check them out, give them a follow on all the socials, and check out their website. Hopefully you guys all have a wonderful and amazing holiday, and until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Dispatch podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, or maybe even submitting your own story, you can do all that and more at theraspydispatcher.com. Until next time, stay